Welcome into Mavericks Today. It's Harrison Graham and Jeffrey Cooperstein with you. And after this season has come and gone after a great run to the finals, we're looking ahead to the 24-25 season, and that starts with the offseason. You got the draft around the corner, NBA free agency as well, trades, all that available for all 30 NBA teams. And Coop, on today's show, we're going to go through the Mavericks' perfect offseason. If they were able to pull this off, we'd all be very, very happy.
Yeah, here's a little cheat sheet from ESPN's Bobby Marks. Shout out to him for putting this together. The Mavs obviously have the 58th pick in the 2024 NBA draft. Their free agents include Derrick Jones Jr. and Markieff Morris. Their committed salary is $175 million. That includes cap holds and everything like that. They're just $3 million below that first luxury tax apron as well, and there you have the outline of the roster with the starting five and role players. So the Mavs are in a pretty good position, obviously coming off a Western Conference championship and an NBA Finals berth. So the Mavs they have work to do to try to become this perfect team and win the NBA title, but there's definitely a good spot to start.
Yeah, I think they've got some flexibility. They've got some contracts they could try to flip potentially as well. And I think that's a good place to start. Tim Hardaway Jr. on an expiring deal. I think it's
time to go, brother.
$16 million and change. Yeah, look, we said it a lot last offseason that I think if a trade they even sort of popped up, they would have traded him. I'm not saying it's going to be easier to trade him, especially the second half of his season, the way that unfolded and how he played in the playoffs. But expiring deals are typically easier to move on from. I think you got to find a way to move his contract. I'm not going to trade a 2025 first to do it, but
Would you trade 58?
Yes. For the right situation, I probably would. You could dump Hardaway in 58 for just to free up money to sign Derrick Jones, we're going to talk about. So I think he wants to move on. I think the Mavs want to move on. If the Mavs are back in the playoffs next year, I don't envision him playing a major role. So I think it's time to find an exit strategy here.
Yeah, Tim's been with the Mavs since 2019, so it's been basically almost 5.5 years now since he's been a part of the Mavs. He was in that KP trade originally. I think it's just time to go, man. I think it's run its course this season. I don't think he really wanted to be here coming into this season, but the Mavs couldn't really find a deal to put him in.
And he played well early. I don't know what happened.
He played really well early. He ended up finishing the 2023-2024 season shooting 35.3% from three-point range, averaging 14.5 points. So his counting numbers look good, but basically from February 1st on, he was a complete non-factor. He could not make a shot to save his life, and I think the Mavs got frustrated with him, and I think he is frustrated with his own situation. I think a change of scenery benefits both parties.
Yeah, maybe this is time he finally heads to South Beach. Who knows? But
if Tim Hardaway Sr. has anything to say about it, that's where he will be.
Has Tim Hardaway played his last game in Dallas? Type Y for yes and for no. While this was more 50-50 last offseason, I'd say it's 90-10 right now.
Yeah.
With that 10% being literally just no one wants him at all.
And even if that's the case, I could see a scenario where the Mavs stretch waive him.
Yeah, they would take on $5.5 million a year for the next 3 years, which not super ideal, but that gets you then at that point you would be about $12 million below the apron. So maybe you consider that. That pretty much frees up a full mid-level spot to go get Derrick Jones. So that might be your backup plan. If you can't find a destination for him, you just stretch waive him. So I think he's done in Dallas. Some good moments. Second best player in a series where they lost in 7 to the Clippers in 2021. He was terrific that year, but it's time to move on, and I do think that the Mavs will.
Another guy that the Mavs need to consider whether is going to be on the roster or not this next season is Maxi Kleber. He's a pretty polarizing figure as well, Harrison. Kleber's been around with the Mavs. He's the second longest tenured Mav behind Dwight Powell. He's been here since 2016, and I think Maxi still has some value to this team. It just depends on what his role is going to be going forward.
Yeah, I think he's got, 2 years left on his deal?
Yep, 2 years at $11 million.
2 for 22. So certainly I would say a tradable contract. This was a player early in the playoffs against the Clippers, Coop, that played a pretty big role. He was defending his ass off.
Shot 10 of 18 from 3.
10 of 18 from 3. Smallish sample size, but he's kind of one of those flamethrower guys. When he gets in the zone, he really can kind of get hot shooting the basketball. Two things, though. One, he is wildly inconsistent as a shooter, like throughout the course of a season. He's super up and down. And two, he's got legitimate injury concerns at this point. He's suffered a lot of different types of injuries. If you get 60 out of 82 out of him, you're pretty happy. That's not crazy appealing for other teams. So I kind of think he ends up staying, and he's like, I don't know, a 10 to 15 minute per game guy. Like I think I agree with you. Game 6-5 was frustrating, where it's like he's not defending well, he's not shooting well. I still think when healthy, he has a role, but it has to be a pretty defined role. Like Jason Kidd getting obsessed with playing him extended minutes, that's got to end.
I think if he plays 10 to 15 minutes, that would be a pretty decent role for him. It'll help keep him healthier, hopefully, and it'll give his minutes more impact when he's on the court. Yeah. I do think there's a role for him here. But also, at the end of the day, like you said, 2 years, $22 million left, 11 per year. It's a very tradable contract as well. So if you find a deal that needs Maxi Kleber to completion, I don't think the Mavs really hesitate in doing so.
And that's kind of why we have him in the make a decision category, because if you want to keep him and have a small role for him, that's cool. If you want to trade him in part of a different type of deal to get a different type of player, or maybe to get a pick earlier in the second round of the draft or something like that, I'd be okay with that as well. So.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. If I had to guess on Maxi, I'd say he is on the team next year, but it's definitely not a done deal by any means.
Yeah, he's kind of where Tim was last year, where it's like you could see it going either way. He could be here, he could be gone. If he's back, it's probably his last year here. I would think they try to move him entering that last year of the deal, but we'll see what happens here. Number 3, re-signed Derrick Jones Jr., and I think points 1 and 2 could directly tie here. If you dump Hardaway, that frees up money. If you trade Kleber, that could free up money. Didn't have a great finals, although he did play his best game of the finals in that closeout Game 5 loss. But for this guy provided a lot, man. He defended 2 through 4s pretty damn well. He's your most athletic player in the open court, which this team, Coop, shifted dramatically in the Luka era, where they looked to run a lot more, and I think his athleticism in the open court was a real positive in that regard.
Yeah.
He was a little streaky as a shooter, but was good enough as a three-point shooter that teams had to respect him out there for the most part. I would like Derrick Jones to be back. I mean, is it one of those situations where he played above his head this year and you regret this contract a couple years from now? Possibly, but I think he showed a lot this year where I would prefer to bring him back.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say he was the best bargain signing in the NBA this year on a veteran minimum. I mean, he was starting, giving you heavy minutes on a team that made the NBA Finals. So I really do believe that he was one of the better, if not the best signing for its value in the NBA. And he is going to get paid. He will have suitors in NBA free agency. Whether that's the Mavs, that remains to be seen. But I did want to pull this excerpt over here from Mavs Moneyball. Shout out to my guys over there. They had a pretty good write-up on how they could possibly pay Derrick Jones. They said the Mavs are $3.5 million below the first tax apron with only 13 players. Let's assume they need room to sign a 15th. We need to leave enough room for a second-year minimum, meaning the draft pick or whatever. That's projected to be around $2 million. Accounting for that salary, the Mavs have $1.4 million in apron room. Hypothetically, if you could trade THJ and a second into someone else's cap, you would create enough room to offer Jones the entire mid-level exception. And Harrison, I think that's what he's going to end up getting.
Yeah, and again, if your backup plan was to stretch waive Tim, that would free up about 11 this year. So you add 11 to the 1 point whatever. That's 12 and change. You're basically at the mid-level. Yep. I mean, maybe it's $500,000 less than 12.8 or whatever, but I think that would be close enough where Jones would stay here.
And this is what your mid-level looks like.
He's made it clear he wants to stay here. And look, that's a pretty penny, man. It's very possible that 2 years into that deal, you're like, man, he has not lived up to this. But it's also like, it's not like you have a ton of other options.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to explore some free agents, I'm sure, in the coming days and weeks. Weeks, plural is probably rich. Leading up to free agency. But, I'd be hard-pressed, considering what you already know he's given you, that you're going to find a more impactful player, especially defensively, out there with his athletic profile. You might find someone who's a better shooter. You might find someone who defends one position better. But are you going to find someone who can defend 1 through 4s at a pretty decent clip, score in the open court, and just provide a high level above the rim athletic profile? I doubt it.
I just did this on the fly because if you recall, in last year, the Mavericks signed Matisse Thybulle to an offer sheet. I just went up
3 for 33.
3 for 33. That's so $11 million a year. I just went and pulled up his stats. So he averaged 5.5 points this year, 40% from the field, 34.5% from 3.
Jones was notably better, and he's longer and more athletic than Thybulle. So
you got a better value there. Now you're going to have to pay for it though here if you want to keep him, I think.
But I think this is kind of what the Thybulle deal is, right? It's
4
just
for 55.
It's a 4-year deal with the inflation of the mid-level going up a little bit. So it's hefty-ish, but that's kind of what these kind of players cost. The only scary thing, Coop, again, like if he played exactly the same as he did this year for the next 4 years, it's a good contract. The scary thing is, before this season, he's never really been what he was this year consistently. So that's the scare. That's the concern, is like, can he keep this level of play up moving forward? I'm not even asking him to improve. Like, can he just be the same guy?
Exactly.
If you're confident the answer is yes, I'm signing that deal pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the Mavs are leaning that way as well. Now, it is not a simple negotiation. I mean, the Mavs would need to create room somehow. We outlined a couple of the avenues in which they can do that, but it's not as black and white as let's re-sign him today and get it over with. I mean, no, they have to make some moves and plan for it to happen. So if I had to guess right now again on this, I think he would be back here, but it's not going to be for cheap, man. It's definitely not.
I would say 70% he's back. Like, I'm pretty confident, but there are definitely scenarios where he's not. Teams can overpay. If you're having trouble moving Hardaway, he may just choose to sign elsewhere. Like, it's not a guarantee, but I would definitely like to see him back, and I think he's, probably learned a lot from this playoff run where he was pretty good and then hit some adversity in the finals. So, and he's still young too. He's 26? I mean, it's not like this is a 10-year journeyman at age 30 finding something. Like, if you sign him to a 3-4 year deal, he's still very much in his athletic prime. So I would definitely do that if I was the Mavs.
Best for sign, P for pass. Would you re-sign Derrick Jones Jr.? Let us know down in the comments. And once again, we just appreciate all of you guys for joining us throughout the postseason. We had so much fun here on the channel. We'd love to do it again next year. Let's go get to the 2025 NBA Finals. The road starts right now. So be sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll keep you guys up to date with all the latest Mavericks news and rumors throughout the 2024 offseason. Harrison.
We got one more, don't we?
We do.
We got one more.
We got one more.
A little teaser. The perfect offseason not done yet. But yes, thank you guys so much. Please subscribe if you haven't, as we will continue to keep you guys informed. Okay.
It has a question mark. I want to preface.
Okay.
It has a question mark on it.
Acquire
LeBron James. And here's the reason it has a question mark. Because there are multiple ways you could do this. You could have him opt in and trade, or you could have him opt out and take less money and re-sign. There are multiple ways, and there are multiple questions you have to ask yourself if you're going to sign LeBron James.
If he were to opt in and trade, what's his opt-in? Like $40 million?
$51.4 million.
I mean, what does that even look like?
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about Hardaway and Kleba, that's $27 million. Green gets you to 40. I mean,
is it Washington or Gafford?
Dwight Powell.
That's 4.
Here's what I'll say. If LeBron James wants to be a Mav, he's gonna have to opt out. Yeah. I think his $51 million player option, like, sure, would a lot of teams pay that? Absolutely, but I would just, how bad do you want to play with Kyrie and Luka?
Yep.
And if you don't, which I wouldn't blame him if he doesn't want to that bad, I just think this is too tricky. I think ideally he would opt out and you sign him for $30 to $40 million. Yeah. I don't know if he'll do that.
I don't either. I don't know if Rich Paul would let him do that.
He doesn't have much of an incentive to do that, but $51 million, like, are you dumping Gafford and or Washington?
I'm not.
It sounds crazy, but, like, I don't think I am either. Like, you finally have this center. Like, here's one thing I will say. You've got Luka, Kyrie, Gafford, and Washington all with 2 years left on their deals. I don't want to split that quartet up right now especially while Lively grows. Like,
there's no need to mess that up.
You've been begging for quality center play. Now you've got two pretty good ones. Like, I'm not entering next season without Lively and Gafford on this team. I just think that would be a mistake.
I do think it's important to note this. If he leaves LA and decides he no longer wants to be a Laker, the Mavs are very much in the conversation.
No question. If he opts out, that's a different deal. I'm just saying, if he opts in and it's a trade to match $51 million, I don't see an avenue where that happens.
But like we said on our video earlier this week, if LeBron wants to be a Maverick, you do it, man. I mean, I know that he comes with all of the circus and all of the pomp and circumstance and whatever. God forbid Brian Windhorst would probably have to buy a house in Dallas and come here for the season, which we don't want that. But look, man, I think he'd make this team significantly better. And if you ask yourself, who are you taking, LeBron or Derrick Jones Jr., I think the answer is pretty easy. Maybe some of you disagree, but I'm taking LeBron anyway.
It's absolutely LeBron. You guys let us know. LBJ for LeBron, DJJ for Derrick Jones. It's definitely LeBron. If he opts out, which I expect him to, all bets are off. Now, depending on when you're watching this, JJ Redick may already have the Lakers job, and that might maybe that makes this all a moot point. But how funny would it be if Redick got that job and then LeBron left? I mean, that would be something incredible.
Yeah, that would be something. We'll see what happens here in the offseason, but interesting times ahead for the Mavericks. Draft coming up in about a week or so, and free agency not too far after. So we'll have you guys up to date with all the latest Mavs happenings, and we'll see you guys soon on the channel.
Peace.